Because your life is way more than a list of to-dos. It's time to meet your future self. This is episode 13 of the Where to Next podcast. Hi, friend. Welcome to the Where to Next podcast. I'm your host, Stacey V, and I'm so honored to be spending the next few minutes together. If you're a driven go-getter who's doing life just fine, but at the end of the day you find yourself wondering, is this it? Then pull up a chair because we're going to figure it out together. Where to next? Finally, the day you've all been waiting for. I jest. Today we are talking about future self, and the reason I say that is because if you've listened to any of the past episodes, future self is a concept that I reference on the regular, and now's the time to finally talk about it. So future self is not new. It's been around for a while, and when I first learned about future self, I thought, oh goodness, this is just another tool, another exercise, another thing. And quite the contrary, it had such a profound impact on me. And I've done this work with a lot of clients in the past. I even do it with my kids sometimes. So sit back and let's go. Future self is obviously, by the title, who you are in the future. It could be next week, it could be 3 months from now, it could be 2 years or 20 years down the road. Because your future is being created today. Now, with every decision you make, you are working toward a future version of yourself. When you think about future you, this is not a perfect, idealized version of yourself. This is what a lot of people get wrong. I did in the beginning. Future you is still you. You are still human. You still have a human brain. You still have fears and insecurities and a whole bunch of mishigas. What is different, though, is that you know how to figure things out because you're in the future. You know how to manage your sabotaging, how to talk to yourself, how to pivot, and how to work with all the parts of you. The inner mean girl, your scared self, and even your badass self. And yes, every single one of us has a badass part of us. When you think of your future self, I want you to imagine, who are you with? What types of conversations are you having? What's the relationship with yourself like? How do you talk to yourself? How do you treat yourself? What kinds of experiences are you having? Where do you go for coffee? Maybe you sit on the beach somewhere. When you're on vacation, where are you going? What are you wearing? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What are some of your daily habits and routines? What's fulfilling you? How are you feeling? What are some of the predominant emotions? I want you to get specific. I want you to get lost in the details, almost like it's a movie. I want you to feel it. Because your future is happening whether you think about it or not. Most of us, many of us, plan in terms of our future already. We are saving for our children's education. We have a rainy day fund perhaps, or we plan for vacations or retirement. That's an active form of planning. But we don't intentionally determine who we want to be, the person we want to be at some point in the future. And that's exactly what makes this exercise so different. It's the focus on the being over doing. Walt Disney famously said something to the tune of, if you can dream it, you can do it. And that's what this moment, this experience is about. Here's what I mean. You may think this whole concept sounds a lot like goal setting. To me, goals are external. They feel outside of me, even though I do things to reach the goal. But when I think about goals, there's this tightness in my body. There's this pressure and rigidity. Future self-work is totally different. It's a process. It's getting to know a different version of yourself. It's not going to the gym and doing 25 burpees and 25 push-ups and a whole bunch of circuits. That's a transaction. Future self-work is loving, it's gentle, and it's one of the ways in which I care for me. I do a lot of things to take care of myself. Daily movement, I get morning sun if I can, nutrition. You probably do a lot of these things too. You live in community, you have friendships and relationships that you work on personally, professionally, you give back to the community, however you show up as a human. Future self-work and having this relationship with myself is another way I take care of me. Because future me, future you, is a combination of qualities and characteristics. Think of it like this. It's a development versus a to-do. It's who you're becoming. I don't want my life to be a list of to-do items. I want it to be more whole, more encompassing. I want it to be intoxicating, kind of like when you're walking down the red carpet and it just keeps unrolling and unrolling and unrolling. It just keeps getting better and better and better. When you create your future self, you develop this deep relationship with her and you move toward her as if you're walking down that red carpet continuously, versus a goal is something we push toward and eventually the red carpet ends. Ta-da! And that event just happens. I don't ever want the red carpet to stop. You feel the difference? Notice that difference. Future you is created with thought and love and a tremendous amount of self-compassion. And so you start being that version of you now, and you get to practice being her today in the many ways and the many opportunities available. One of the questions you can ask is, what feeling does future me feel on the regular? I'll give you an example. One of the feelings I want to feel as future Stacey is proud. Proud is such a motivating feeling for me. And when I get to be at whatever point it is in the future when I do this exercise, I want to look back on Stacey of today, on Stacey of March 3rd, 2023, when I'm recording this, and I want to be proud of who I am being, because I know a proud version of me takes very different actions than an insecure and afraid version of me. It doesn't mean I'm not insecure, and it doesn't mean that I'm not afraid. It means that I see those parts of me, I acknowledge them, and I bring proud in. And when I do that, insecure and afraid Stacey might still be there, but maybe they're just a smaller amount. Or maybe they go away altogether because proud trumps insecure and afraid. Another question to ask is, what's standing between you today and future you? What are the obstacles? And there are going to be many. And part of future work, future self-work, is solving for the obstacles as that future version of yourself. Because remember, future you has already figured it out. Future you doesn't let yourself off the hook. So immediately make a list of obstacles. All of the obstacles. Even if they sound silly, even if they're not really obstacles. A lot of times when I do this work, my mom clients will say, I have no time. I have a job, I have a husband, I volunteer, I'm taking care of my parents, I have my kids, don't forget my kids, right, yes. A lot of that stuff is never going away. You hope that it doesn't. But what you can do is you can say to yourself, okay, how can I do this with all of these parts of my life? Let me give you an example. If you know, future self knows that you have a sabotaging pattern, you can say to yourself, all right, I know this pattern is coming. I don't know exactly what it looks like or even the triggers, but I know that it's there and there's this tendency for me to show up this way. A past version of you would have given up, or maybe you would have made it mean you're a failure, or you're never going to get there. Future self work has you handling that sabotage pattern differently. She might say, okay, I see you. When this sabotaging pattern comes up, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to phone a friend. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to practice some self-talk, something like that. A big part of this is change, and change can be scary. It can also be exciting and invigorating, especially when you're moving in the direction of your dreams. Creating future self requires you to show up differently, to be different, which leads to doing different actions, which gets you different results. There's an old saying, nothing changes if nothing changes. And if we're not intentionally setting a course for where we want to go, most of us will end up in the same place, just an older version of ourselves. There's never going to be a more perfect moment than right now. I mean, never. And when your brain tells you there is, she's lying to you, and it's time to call BS. Here's my little tirade for today, as always with peace and love. Every single person on this planet has 24 hours. Next month, or next year even, you may have different and more demands on your time. As long as you're alive, you will have demands on your time. That's just how life works, full send. And when those demands go away, sad to say, but that's when we're no longer here. When something is that important to you, you figure it out. You always have. You have figured out every single thing you've been through in your life up to this moment. And there's been a lot. And a good portion of it has been pretty gnarly because that's just how life is. End of tirade. My recommendation and my wish for you is to spend some time journaling about this or write a letter to your future self. You can burn it, you can fold it up, you can put it under your mattress. I don't care what you do with it. But spend some time visualizing and getting to know future self. What does she want? Pick a moment in the future. This single act of just writing a letter to yourself can change things. It's intentionally creating thoughts. It's intentionally meeting her. And it is so powerful. And you may be surprised at what comes up. Chances are there's something in there that you never even knew. So go and have fun with it. And remember, as you do, a few things. Change has to come from a place of love. It cannot be restrictive. It cannot be punitive. It doesn't last that way. It's simple math. When you take a positive and a negative and you multiply them together, you always come out with a negative number. That's why it doesn't last, or it feels hard, or it feels tense and like pressure. This is a process. You are making progress, and it is never about doing anything perfectly. We've been there, we've done that. We don't do that anymore. You are rewiring your brain. You are practicing showing up differently, being a different person. And most of us have been some version of ourselves for quite some time. So anytime you set about to shift anything, it takes a little while. Remember, the little things add up. The little victories you have throughout the course of the day matter. Celebrate the heck out of them. And lastly, you're going to think this isn't working. You're going to think, oh, Stacey does not know what she's talking about. Trust me on this. Trust me. If you like this episode, or if anything landed, will you do me a solid favor, please? I have a big goal of having this podcast be an award-winning podcast. And one way that you can help with that is by sending this to your best friend. It's super easy. Just go right into the podcast app, hit the top 3 dots, and just share with a friend or two. Who knows? Maybe you guys even meet for coffee and have a working session and do some future self-work together. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening. If this was helpful, text this episode to your friend, and reviews are always appreciated. I know you know that. You can find me on Instagram at Stacey Vulakh, StaceyVulakh, or email me directly. That's the best place to find me. hello@staceyv.com. Definitely grab the link for my weekly note in the show notes below. And remember, until next time, you're in charge. Where are you going next?